Do you have a cool hobby or pastime? Well, that may ruin your chances of getting a job. In this video, we're talking about job interview hobby in the new normal. Specifically, how do you answer the question, what are your hobbies in a job interview in the new normal? I'm going to tell you, it can really hurt you. But don't worry, we're going to protect you. What up, fam? Dr. James W. Stalkup, a.k.a. Jimmy Joe Coltrane. I'm like the Post Malone of helping you get your own home, and I do that by teaching you how to do a killer job interview. Let's get started. Okay, I'm going to protect you from this question. I have to protect you from yourself. You've got a cool hobby. You have something really neat that you're involved in. It's going to ruin your chances to get a job interview in the new normal. It's going to hurt you even more because it's virtual. Yo, Coltrane, what's the difference with virtual? Well, you have to keep your answers short, and one thing people with a cool hobby can't do is keep the answers short. And this is really the only time that the interviewer is encouraging you to do something that will hurt your chances. What does the Coltrane mean? The interviewer, that obstacle in the room with you, will encourage you to hurt your own chances in this answer. When asked the question, so do you have any hobbies? If you have a really cool hobby, you should be cautious in how you mention it. If it's on your CV, they may actually bring it up. But it may not be on your CV. They may ask you, and you may reply, yeah, I volunteer for a charity that catches rattlesnakes with our bare hands. I train police dogs. Exclusively, I'm the guy in the suit who gets bitten. I build steam-powered rockets to launch myself up in the air. I fly up to the wilderness in Alaska and teach bears empathy. All these things are cool, but they're going to take you down a pathway that's not going to get you the job. So if you play in a rock band or something like that, you have to minimize the impact of that. So, for example, you walk into a job interview. The obstacle at some point during this interview says, do you have a cool hobby? Now we're talking about an in-person interview. You say, yes, I play in a rock band. Oh, what kind of music do you play? Well, we play like alternative, like indie rock. Oh, you mean you play like Mogwai or Godspeed You Black Emperor? No, that's really more like post-rock. We play like more violent films. Okay, so is it like an early 90s? And it never stops. This is going to go on and on and on and on. If the obstacle has an interest in what you're talking about. This is the only job interview question in which the obstacle is actually going to encourage you to hurt your own chances of getting a job because they're interested. And you think you're doing this killer job interview because you're talking about your hobby, and then you walk out and they go, yeah, I don't know if that guy would be a good fit. Literally, you get up and walk out of the room, and then they're like, well, that guy didn't talk much about why he'd be good for this job. They immediately forget that they're the ones who got you off topic. In the mind of the interviewer, in the mind of that obstacle, they do not conceive that they could make an error in the interview process. This is also why a lot of obstacles ask illegal questions and then don't even consider them to be illegal. This is a big issue with this job interview hobby question. If you've got a cool story, if you've got a cool hobby, save it for the company Christmas party after you get hired. Don't tell it now. I conducted a job interview one time and realized this was years and years and years ago. The person was an artist, and we started talking about this person's art, and literally for an hour just talked about art. And this is a panel. There's multiple people interviewing this person. This person started talking about their art, and between all the questions that were being asked, that person talked about their art for an hour. And then the interview was over. You've got killer content. You've got to be able to deliver it. So yeah, some hobbies and stories are cooler than others, and you're more likely to get the job with a lame hobby than you are with a cool hobby. Yeah, I collect stamps. I don't even know what question you would ask if somebody said they collect stamps. Do you have an inverted Jenny? Maybe. I don't know. I don't even know what a question would be. So let's get on with the next question in the interview, right? Like that's what the person's thinking. Oh, that's not interesting. This is the only time that not being interesting is a big advantage. If you have a hobby that's in any sort of alternate culture or not underworld, but anything that would be a sort of lifestyle kind of thing, you've got to figure out how to get that out of the job interview because people will pepper you with questions for the entire time. And you don't want to tie your identity to a hobby. So, for example, I met somebody one time that reenacts Back to the Future. They're like in a Back to the Future fan club in which they dress up like Back to the Future people, her and her husband, and her husband looks exactly like the guy from Back to the Future, Marty McFly, right? So they go and they dress up and they do this stuff. Now, if you do that, now you're the Back to the Future person. Hey, you remember that Back to the Future guy we interviewed on Wednesday? Do you think he'd be a good fit? Said nobody, ever. Now, I'm not telling you to completely remove your cool hobby because you have to do something. And if somebody says, hey, so what are your hobbies? And you say, I have none, you're going to sound like a nut. That's not going to get you the job. So what you've got to do is you've got to drill down your hobby to a few words and leave them hanging. And let me say this, in a virtual interview in which the answers need to be much, much faster, the cool hobby hurts you even worse, in my opinion, than an in-person interview. That's how it differs in 2020. You got to drill down to a few words, leave them hanging. Don't be afraid to leave them hanging. People are talking about the end of The Sopranos, how a decade later or whatever it is now. They're talking about that episode because it left everybody hanging. Leave them hanging. Drill it down to a specific few words and leave them hanging. Think about like flash fiction, for sale, baby shoes, never worn. Like that's an entire story in one sentence. It's attributed to Hemingway. I don't think he actually wrote it, but some kind of small. So for example, let's say that I train police dogs, like I decoy for police dogs. And for whatever reason, they either know that or it's in my CV or they ask me about it. So tell us about your hobbies. Well, I help out the local police department training police dogs. That's a cool hobby. You mean you get bitten by police dogs? Tell us about that. Dogs bite hard. Dogs bite hard. Next question. Now, they may press you and they may say, well, are they all German Shepherds? Or I heard now they use Dutch Shepherds and Belgian Malinois. And then you smile and laugh and say, I could talk about this all day. We probably need to stick to interview questions, but if you get me off on this subject, trust me, we're going to be talking a lot. After I get the job, we can visit about it then. And that's like a nice affable way that you could say, yeah, it's a cool hobby. I acknowledge it, but I really don't want to engage with that. List a hobby, one sentence summary, something that's flash fiction, something that's like interesting, like something that draws you in. And then if they press it, you're going to say, oh my gosh, I'm so passionate about it. I could talk about that all day. We probably need to just stick to the interview questions because I want to make sure that we get the most of our time. Come up with some little nice way that you can say that, study it, and add that to your personalized content. And that is how you escape. That's how you completely get out of the job interview cool hobby gambit problem issue for 2020. And hey, click like and click subscribe. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. I'm publishing 2 videos a week. I don't want you to miss out on any of them. Also, and I like to leave a little bonus part. This is like superior level. Like if you figure out how to do this effectively, I wouldn't go for it in an interview, but it's possible. So this is one of the few job interview sort of questions that lets you really get creative. When I say make that little teaser, when I say like drill that down to one sentence, you can actually clickbait that sentence if you want. So on a superior level, it's possible that you could clickbait that sentence and give the interviewer this feeling like, what's next? That's a great emotion to have in your mind. What's next? And then not tell them what's next, right? So for example, if you train police dogs and they say, well, tell us about that. You could say, well, I'll tell you one thing that people don't know. The dog biting is not the worst part. All right, check out the next video. Should have it up in a few days, and thanks for watching.